Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Green Carnation, A Dark Poem Part 1, The Shores of Melancholia, out September 5th on Season of Mist. The album has 6 tracks, 42 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are a Norwegian progressive metal band. Now, this is part 1 of a 3-part concept trilogy, and it's inspired by Arthur Rimbaud's Ode to Shakespeare's Ophelia. So there is a very interesting backdrop to this overall concept that's going to tie in all of these 3 records together. Now, just as far as the design of this album, I think this album is brilliantly put together. It has such a great connection between the songs, and it really takes you on a very immersive experience throughout. A very interesting journey, one that has a lot of ebbs and flows, that has a lot of different dynamics, a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different textures, but always very deeply entrenched in a very interesting atmosphere that really brings that melancholy into the forefront. As far as the sound is concerned, this is an open sounding album at times. It's a little bit more narrow in others, but overall it's an album that has a great sound experience. The album is very rich and very textured from that standpoint. And there are, at least in my view, 2 main elements that really define this album as far as its sound is concerned. One of them is the guitars. The guitars on this record are versatile. I don't want to call them diverse because they're not diverse per se, but they're versatile in terms of the sounds, the ideas, the textures, the richness that they offer song in and song out. All the way from an acoustic approach to a more black metal driven style riffs, this album has it at all. And the guitar sound really becomes a little bit of the backbone of the sound experience of this record, of the journey of this album, and everything that this album has to offer always feels like it starts there. That is the main starting point, that is the main catalyst of each and every single song, and the versatility of the record is definitely tied into the versatility of the guitar sound. The other aspect that I think is extremely important is the orchestrations that the album uses in order to better enhance the atmosphere of the record and to bring that melancholy that is such a huge portion of what this album is all about, not just from the concept standpoint, but also from the lyrics and the sound, and all the way to the forefront for the listener to feel a little bit more connected with it. The orchestrations on this album are not what you would expect, for example, from a symphonic record, where they're all the way in the forefront, having not just an impact in the atmosphere, but also driving the sound. It's not the case here. The orchestral pieces that add flair, that add size, that add room to this record, that impact that atmosphere, are better integrated into the overall sound experience, and they just become a layer, a texture in what the overall record delivers from a sonic perspective. But you cannot deny the impact that they have, and that's why I want to mention them, because I really feel like their subtle approach, while subtle, is extremely important and impactful in how this album sounds and how this album feels and the overall size that the record has. The drums on the record, while perhaps not being a main driving force or having the same impact as those orchestrations have or that the guitars have, I thought that the drums on this album definitely had a lot of life in them. They help with the size of the songs, they help with the shape of the songs, and seeing some versatility on the drum approach kind of surprised me, because I was expecting the drums to be a little bit more consistent, a little bit more linear throughout, allowing the guitars to change, the sizes change, the perspectives, almost like the guitars would be the tide in the ocean, and the drums would be more the sand that stays there waiting for that tide to come in or for that tide to go out. It's not the case. The drums are actually quite versatile on the album, not necessarily with the impact, like I said, that the guitars and orchestral pieces have, but you cannot deny that the versatility of the drums matches really well the overall versatility of the record. And I like the less one size fits all and the more the precise experience and the precise approach that they have on a song by song basis. The bass sound on this album is phenomenal as well. Perhaps one of the more linear elements of the album, very noticeable throughout the entire record, but not as dynamic as the other elements. A little bit more subtle, a little bit more static, a little bit more linear, but still creating and adding to the overall size that these tracks have. In some cases, adding a little bit to the melancholy and darkness of the songs, and in other cases adding a little bit of groove where the tracks perhaps lacked it in some points. Once you get into the vocals, the vocal performance is haunting. It's warm, it's cold at times, but overall it feels more like a narrator style approach when it comes to the vocal performance. I like that style, I like that approach, specifically when you think about the concept of this record and the trilogy itself, and then when you think about the lyrical content of the album. You don't want necessarily the vocal performance on this record to break too far away from where the lyrics are and break too far away from where the concept starts. So taking more of a narrator style approach in terms of the delivery also allows the record to have a lot more emotion as far as the vocals are concerned, and allows also the lyrics to carry a lot more emotion forward, making the album even more melancholic, even more impactful, but perhaps even more important, very haunting throughout. This is a very haunting sounding album, but it's also a very haunting sounding album as far as the vocal delivery is concerned. Something that I haven't seen as consistent as I see it on this record from Green Carnation on any other album that they've ever done. And when you put all of these things together, I think this is easily going to be one of my favorite albums of the year. It's definitely my favorite Green Carnation record because it's just such an easy album to listen to get lost in it. And I think that is a great sign of a great album, is when you press play and you're just taken back by the quality of the music, by the quality of the art, by the emotion that it carries, and you just completely immersed and mesmerized by it. And this album does that across all 6 songs. As far as favorite tracks are concerned, I want to start off with As Silence Took You. This is the opening track on the album. Great atmosphere, very haunting atmosphere that it's enhanced by a great bass sound that really permeates throughout the entire track. The orchestral pieces on this song really add some size and definitely some depth to what the overall sound is all about. The vocals, very dynamic, matching the composition of the song, the moments of the song, the ebbs and flows of the song perfectly. Perhaps a little bit more somber, a little bit more collected, a little bit more cold in the verses, and definitely a lot more forceful, a lot more open, a lot brighter in the chorus. But that's just also a result of the sound and the experience that comes with that same sound. At the midway point, the song completely blossoms, changes, the vibe of the song changes, musically it changes, and it's a song that becomes a lot more guitar focused moving forward, and that is an excellent way of really dragging this song out, because the guitars start to add different elements that they hadn't added before. This is a track where the guitars add size, they add heaviness, they add melancholy, they add melody, and overall give incredible character to the track. Then we have my favorite song on the entire record, Me, My Enemy. This is the most consistent song in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of the sound, and definitely in terms of the emotion that puts forward. It's a great track sonically because it feels really stripped down. The reason for that is simple. It has a great acoustic guitar sound that gives it that sense of being stripped down, to be a little bit more bare bones, and therefore a little bit more emotionally connected with the way the song comes together, but emotionally connecting to whoever the listener is. This ability to keep the song always very level and always very humble, if you will, in terms of how some of the songs on this album are. This track is completely the polar opposite of everything that the album offers. It never really breaks character. It stays very cohesive. It stays very concise and allows you to see the consistent that the track has, both from a vocal standpoint but also from a musical standpoint. It's an outstanding track. It adds a very interesting caveat on the drum side because it sounds very Latin. The sound on the drums on this track also breaks away with everything else on this record, and it infuses a little bit more of a Latin vibe in it. which works really well off of that acoustic guitar sound and off of the overall texture and emotion that the track carries. Great song. The chorus hits really hard as far as that emotional drive is concerned, and the vocals are outstanding all the way throughout. Last but definitely not least, The Slave That You Are. This is the most Jekyll and Hyde song on the entire record. So I picked two tracks, one that stays super consistent, Me, My Enemy, and then one that is the most volatile song, The Slave That You Are. The Slave That You Are starts off and it has pockets that is just pure black metal. Super heavy, super driven, penetrating, cold, harsh guitar sound with a lot of distortion, very heavy drums, and then harsh vocals, which is a uniqueness within this song compared to how clean and how haunting the overall vocal performance is on this album. So when you start off the song, you almost feel like this, like the album skipped to a different record, because nothing in this album leading up to this point lets you believe that there's going to be a song that sounds like this. But the song doesn't stay consistently a black metal track. It morphs into a more progressive rock song where the guitars are really warmer, a little bit more bigger, with more width and depth to them, not as narrow, not as cold, a little bit warmer, giving that extra size to their sound. The vocals change with it as well, going into that clean vocal approach that brings that emotion into the forefront, and then you have those jolts of just pure black metal. So it's a very volatile, I wouldn't say chaotic, because these momentums happen within a certain pattern, within a certain flow, so the song doesn't fully feel chaotic, but it's at least, at the very least, a very Jekyll and Hyde dynamic style track with two very different sounds, with two very different experiences, two completely different sides of one single coin. This is it, Green Carnation, A Dark Poem Part 1, The Shores of Melancholia, out September 5th on Season of Mist. Hit me up in the comment section, let me know your thoughts. I'll see you all in the next video. Take care, guys.